What if the future of an entire nation rested not on an army, not on a politician, but on the quiet courage of a boy most people ignored? The sun climbed lazily above the horizon in Howat province, its warm fingers stretching over the savannas and the clustered compounds of Bobo Dioulasso. It bathed the region in a golden haze, turning the red clay roads into glowing arteries of a sleeping giant. Life in this part of Burkina Faso began early. Calls to prayer rang out from the local mosque, mingling with the sharp cries of roosters and the rhythmic sweep of handheld brooms against the earth. Inside the royal quarter, a modest cluster of traditional homes made of mud brick and lined with faded blue paint. A boy named Ibrahim Traoré was already up, seated beneath a wide neem tree. At 12 years old, he looked no different from any other child in the neighborhood, but his bearing suggested something else. His spine was straight, his gaze focused, his mind already far from the ground he sat on. Opposite him, an old griot with a faded green turban recited family lineages with careful cadence. Your great-grandfather stood when the region was at war. Your father, may his deeds be remembered, held the line during the drought. You, Ibrahim, must carry both their names. Ibrahim nodded, etching every word into memory. This was how he learned, not from books, but from mouths seasoned by history, and eyes that had seen kings fall and rise again. A few streets down, another boy stirred in a house far more modest. Kemi, thinner than most boys his age, with large eyes and a permanent frown of concentration. He lived with his grandmother, who ran a small stall selling charcoal and roasted peanuts. Kemi rarely played with other children. While others ran barefoot and wild through the bush, he sat on rooftops or perched beneath awnings, always watching, always listening. They first met at the village wrestling festival, where neighborhood boys competed in bare-chested, dusty duels cheered on by elders. Ibrahim, already confident, took down one opponent after another. Kemi, uninterested in proving strength, watched from the crowd with narrowed eyes. When Ibrahim finally caught his gaze and offered a challenge, Kemi shook his head and disappeared. But the spark was struck. Months later, during Quranic school, they sat near each other, trading occasional glances. Ibrahim was loud, opinionated. Kemi was silent, observant. Yet the two boys shared something that no one noticed: a hatred for injustice. When a teacher struck a younger boy too harshly, Ibrahim protested. When a man slapped his wife in the marketplace, Kemi slipped into the crowd and slashed the man's bicycle tires. They never spoke of those things, but they saw. As years passed, their relationship remained that of quiet acknowledgement. A nod here, a shared look there. Ibrahim rose through the ranks of local student leadership. Kemi sank deeper into anonymity. One soared into the sky, the other clung to the earth. But the ground remembers more than the wind. At 16, Ibrahim shocked the village elders by announcing his intent to join the army. You are royal blood, one of them protested. You should lead, not serve. Then I will lead by serving, Ibrahim replied. He left with a rucksack and a prayer. Kemi watched him leave from the shadows, standing behind the wooden door of a tailor shop. He didn't wave, he didn't speak, but he watched. And he remembered. Back in the royal compound, the neem tree under which Ibrahim learned now shed its leaves slowly, the seasons changing. Kemi, now working odd jobs to support his grandmother, swept near the compound occasionally. No one noticed him, no one spoke to him, but he lingered. When Ibrahim returned on rare military leave, his visits were brief, yet the village buzzed with pride. Children followed him. Elders blessed him. Shopkeepers told stories of the boy who wore the uniform. But even as he shook hands and offered smiles, his eyes searched the crowd. And once or twice they found Kemi, still silent, still watching. Neither knew then that their destinies would one day collide. Neither knew that one boy's ability to listen, to observe, to disappear into the tapestry of everyday life would one day be the thread that held the nation together. And neither knew that war was coming. The wind shifted in Bobo Dioulasso. It was the kind of shift that didn't move leaves or knock down signs. It whispered, crept, carried tension that you couldn't see, but could feel in your bones. For those who had lived long enough, it felt like the kind of quiet that came before the scream. Kemi, now 17, felt it first. The vendors in the marketplace no longer smiled as easily. A man in a military jacket with no unit patch strolled through the spice district twice in the same day. Children said they heard strange accents in alleyways. And most of all, the neighborhood mosque received a donation too large, too sudden, from a name no one recognized. Kemi didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, he began to track. He had no gadgets, no radios, no license. But he had something more powerful, instinct sharpened by years of silence. He followed the man in the military jacket, tailing him from the market to a dilapidated warehouse on the edge of town. He noted the trucks that came and went. The cargo was never visible. The conversations always coded. Back home, his grandmother saw him scribbling notes in the margins of an old French grammar book. "You think too much," she said. "You always did." "I see too much," Kemi replied. "Someone has to." On the 5th day, Kemi overheard something that froze his blood. "Traore is planning a visit. They say it's for a school inauguration. We hit him before he leaves." The voice was deep, foreign. The man speaking had a scar across his forehead, shaped like a crescent moon. He wasn't from around here, and he wasn't talking about protest. He was talking about assassination. Kemi didn't go home that night. He didn't sleep. He took the long road, past the broken footbridge and the edge of the cotton fields, to find the one man who could still reach the president. His name was Mamadou, a former soldier, one of Ibrahim's childhood friends, now a quiet farmer with a limp and a loaded shotgun. When Kemi arrived at his farm, he collapsed in the dirt, breathless. Mamadou came out with a lantern and listened in silence as Kemi recounted every detail. The names, the trucks, the scar-faced man. By sunrise, a message had been sent. By noon, President Ibrahim Traoré himself was on his way. The road to Bobo Dioulasso was quiet when the convoy of 2 dark green military trucks rolled past the fields. Dust rose in their wake like smoke from a forgotten fire. Inside the lead truck, President Ibrahim Traoré sat in silence, his eyes fixed ahead, his jaw tight. He wore no medals, no symbols of office, just plain military fatigues and a scarf wrapped tightly around his neck. Next to him sat Captain Suleiman, his chief of field operations, checking his weapon for the 3rd time. No one spoke, not even the driver. "Is the boy reliable?" Suleiman finally asked, breaking the silence. "He was reliable when no one else knew to be," Ibrahim replied. As the truck slowed to a stop just outside the village, Mamadou was waiting. Still leaning on that old wooden cane, still dressed like a farmer. But his eyes held the glint of a man who had once stormed enemy compounds without blinking. "He's waiting," Mamadou said simply. The convoy moved into the heart of the village.
No sirens. No flashing lights.
Just quiet tension. Locals peeked from behind curtains and cloth stalls. They knew something was coming. They just didn't know what. Kemi stood under the neem tree near the marketplace, holding his notebook. When Ibrahim stepped down from the truck, their eyes met for the first time in years. He looked older, leaner, but his gaze was exactly the same. "You look like your father," Kemi said. "You look like you haven't slept," Ibrahim replied. "No time for sleep," Kemi muttered, flipping open the notebook. "This way." They moved quickly. Kemi led them through narrow alleys, past sleeping goats, under clotheslines heavy with drying garments. He stopped in front of a crumbling bakery that hadn't baked bread in over a decade. "This place has been dead since I was 10, he said. "Until last week." Captain Suleiman signaled for the team to surround the structure. 2 men flanked the rear. Another took the roof. Kemi bent down and lifted a warped piece of plywood near the back door. Beneath it, a latch. "It's not locked," he whispered. "They don't expect visitors." Suleiman nodded. Ibrahim raised his hand. 3, 2, 1. They burst in. The cellar reeked of gasoline and sweat. A single bulb swung from the ceiling, casting long shadows on crates packed with rifles, grenades, and bundles of cash wrapped in foreign currency. 3 men sat at a table, stunned. Down!
Ibrahim barked.
The room exploded in motion. One man reached for a weapon, too late. The soldier nearest him fired once. He dropped. Another lunged for a side door, taken down. The third raised his hands and froze. We were only... Don't speak, Ibrahim growled. Not unless you want to lie with your friend. The operation lasted less than 10 minutes. By the time they exited the bakery, the sun was beginning to lower, casting an orange glow over the village rooftops. But it wasn't over. A whistle cut through the silence. Then, gunshots, from the far side of the marketplace. They're here, Kemi said. The real cell. Without hesitating, Ibrahim sprinted toward the noise, his men following close behind. Civilians scattered as bullets flew. The rebels had taken position near the mosque, using prayer mats and sandbags to shield themselves. Kemi dropped behind a produce stall, heart pounding. He had no gun, but he had eyes. There, he shouted. On the rooftop, 2 more. Suleiman aimed high and fired. One rebel slumped. The other fled. A small girl screamed, caught in the open. Kemi didn't think. He darted forward, grabbed her, and rolled behind a cart. A bullet tore through the wheel inches from his head. Ibrahim saw it. He advanced in a crouch, unloading controlled bursts of fire. One by one, the attackers fell or fled. In 32 minutes, it was done. 6 rebels dead, 4 captured, and Ibrahim was alive. Back at the neem tree, as dusk settled, the villagers emerged from hiding. They gathered slowly, quietly, as if unsure whether peace had returned. Then Ibrahim stepped forward, mud on his boots, gun still slung over his shoulder. He turned to Kemi. You were right. Kemi didn't smile. You were fast. Ibrahim looked at the crowd, then back to the boy. This one, he said, raising Kemi's hand, is the reason I'm alive, the reason you're alive. The people cheered. And beneath the neem tree, where kings were once told of their duties, a boy with a notebook became something more. Night fell like a velvet curtain over the village, but no one slept. Kemi sat beneath the neem tree, blood drying on his sleeve where a shard of broken glass had nicked him during the firefight. His eyes stared blankly at the horizon, but his ears were tuned to every rustle, every breath, every footfall in the village. Across the square, President Ibrahim Traoré stood with Mamadou, reviewing field reports in the flickering glow of a gas lantern. Soldiers gathered what was left of the rebel cache. Some maps, a few communication devices, and a notebook filled with codes no one had yet cracked. This attack wasn't meant to end here, Ibrahim murmured, his voice low. Mamadou nodded. It was a probe, to see how close they could get. And they got close. Too close. As the adrenaline faded, Ibrahim walked over to Kemi. He stood for a moment, unsure of how to speak to the boy who had just saved his life twice in one day. Kemi didn't rise. Is it over? For now. I don't think it is. No, Ibrahim agreed. Neither do I. Silence stretched between them until Ibrahim pulled something from his vest pocket. A sealed envelope. What's this? Your name, Ibrahim said. As a recruit in the National Intelligence Directorate. Kemi blinked. I didn't ask for a job. You didn't ask to risk your life either. But you did. Kemi took the envelope without another word. 3 weeks later, he boarded a nondescript bus heading for Ouagadougou.
No uniform. No fanfare.
Just a satchel of clothes, his worn notebook, and a head full of questions. Training was brutal. 6 months of psychological testing, language immersion, firearms instruction, cyber tracking, and hand-to-hand combat. Kemi failed often, but he never failed the same test twice. He learned to tail a suspect without being seen, to pick a lock with a wire and a heartbeat, to intercept a phone signal using a spoon and a copper wire. He didn't make friends. Not easily. Most recruits came from military families or academic circles. They mocked Kemi's village French, his quiet nature. But when he outperformed them during a live surveillance challenge, pinpointing a double agent in under 20 minutes, no one spoke against him again. By the time he graduated, his file was labeled Asset, Recommend Deep Cover Assignments, High Instinct, High Loyalty, Low Ego. His first real mission came sooner than expected. A convoy transporting sensitive documents to a regional summit in Niger had gone dark.
No signals.
No recovery. And the documents, classified economic strategy agreements that could destabilize the region if they fell into the wrong hands. Kemi was embedded with a merchant caravan heading south. His cover? A fruit vendor's apprentice with a stutter. He played the part so well that even the caravan leader forgot he was security. 10 days into the journey, they stopped at a desert outpost where locals whispered of an armed group camped in the hills. Kemi waited until nightfall. Disguised as a cook, he entered the camp with a basket of food and a fake story about hunger deals. No one questioned him. He slipped into a supply tent and froze. There, stacked beside cases of canned goods, were the missing convoy crates. And on top, a file marked with a red seal he recognized. Presidential security clearance. He left as quietly as he came. Back in the caravan, he transmitted a burst signal using a hidden button sewn into his robe. Response time, 3 hours. The recovery team neutralized the camp without firing a shot. Most of the mercenaries were asleep. The documents were retrieved. But one thing didn't add up. In the recovered materials, Kemi found a memo with a watermark. Office of the Deputy Military Advisor. That office was inside the palace. Back in Ouagadougou, Kemi walked into the presidential residence during morning prayer, bleeding from a shallow cut on his leg, dust on his clothes, eyes red with exhaustion. He didn't knock. He handed Ibrahim the sealed proof. The president opened the file and stared at the name inside.
Colonel Yao.
A man who had served 3 presidents. A man trusted with internal defense. A man who had dined at Ibrahim's own table. Ibrahim closed the file. I hoped I was wrong, he whispered. Hope is for prayers, Kemi said. Not war. Colonel Yao was arrested 2 hours later. The story never reached the public. The official report cited internal discrepancies. But inside the walls of government, a ripple of fear spread. Someone had found a snake in the nest, and it wasn't one of their own. It was a boy with no last name in the intelligence community. A shadow, a whisper, a ghost. The sun hung low over Ouagadougou as President Ibrahim Traoré sat alone in his private study. The arrest report of Colonel Yao spread across his desk. The room was quiet, but the tension inside him roared. He had fought on battlefields. He had led men through fire. But nothing stung more than betrayal from within. Kemi stood at attention just outside the room, waiting for a signal. A guard opened the door with a nod, and Kemi entered. Ibrahim didn't speak at first. He simply gestured to the chair across from him. I don't normally hold private audiences with agents, the president said. But you've earned more than protocol. Kemi sat cautiously. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was reflective. You saved more than documents, Ibrahim continued. You saved the integrity of this government. Kemi said nothing. You think it's over? The president asked. Kemi shook his head. This was just one layer. Exactly, Ibrahim said. He slid a file across the desk. I want you to go deeper. There's more rot inside the system. We need eyes in places no one dares look. Kemi opened the folder. Names, photos, schedules, hidden bank transactions. A list of individuals under suspicion for collusion, embezzlement, and espionage. I'll do it, Kemi said. No team, Ibrahim warned. No backup. This mission is dark. You'll be alone. Kemi nodded. The following week, Kemi vanished from the capital. No official departure, no goodbyes. His face disappeared from any government registry. He was a ghost, buried in databases as a clerical error. He resurfaced in Lomé, Togo, this time as a dock worker. His first lead was a shipping tycoon rumored to be laundering funds for military defectors. Kemi infiltrated his operations, built a rapport with the man's secretary, and within 3 weeks, discovered a shipping container full of arms being rerouted to northern Burkina Faso. He sent the coordinates. The strike team moved in that night. Next, it was Dakar, then Cotonou, then back to Bobo Dioulasso, where it all began. Each mission peeled back another layer of corruption. Ministers with offshore accounts, military officers selling equipment, diplomats caught in webs of foreign intelligence. Kemi left no trail, only results. And then, one night, he disappeared completely. No signal, no report, gone. For 3 days, panic brewed behind palace walls. Ibrahim called off every unrelated operation. "Find him," he ordered. "Alive." On the 4th day, a woman in a village near the Ghanaian border contacted the regional office. A strange young man had collapsed outside her home, muttering numbers. Those numbers were coordinates. When they found him, Kemi was barely conscious. Malaria, malnutrition, a bullet grazed across his ribs. He had been tracking a mole tied to a French contractor feeding intel to insurgents. He got the proof but barely survived the escape. Back in the capital, Ibrahim visited him in a private medical facility under heavy guard. "You don't get to die," the president said, trying to mask his concern with a smirk. Kemi opened one eye and rasped, "Then stop sending me alone." Ibrahim laughed, but there was pain behind it. "You're too good. That's the problem." When Kemi recovered, Ibrahim held a private ceremony.
No cameras.
No press. He presented Kemi with a plain silver badge. "What's this?" "Your new role," the president said. "You'll oversee internal security under me directly."
No bureaucracy.
No politics, just trust. Kemi took the badge. "I'll still work alone sometimes." "I know," Ibrahim replied. "Just don't vanish next time." Kemi returned to the field, this time with selective authority to recruit and train a team. Individuals like him, from villages, from overlooked places, from silence. The unit was unofficial, untraceable. Kemi's new unit didn't have a name. They weren't listed in government records, nor did they wear uniforms. But within the walls of the intelligence community, they became known as Ibrahim's Eyes. They were handpicked, quiet observers, former scouts, cyber specialists raised in dusty corners of Burkina Faso. They operated from an underground facility in Ouagadougou, camouflaged as a logistics depot. Their mission: dismantle the network of foreign interference that had taken root during decades of political instability. In 1 month, they intercepted a smuggling ring linked to an arms dealer in Libya. In another, they exposed a scheme involving a West African bank channeling funds to paramilitary groups. Ibrahim watched from his office, proud but cautious. He knew their success made them targets. And then the warning came. Coded chatter suggested someone high-ranking was preparing a counterstrike. "Don't react," Kemi told the team. "Observe, track, let them think they're winning." The storm was coming, but this time Kemi would face it on his terms. 3 weeks passed and the trap was almost ready. Through a monitored phone line, Kemi's team intercepted messages between a mid-level bureaucrat and an unnamed contact overseas. Cross-referencing patterns, they found a disturbing detail. Security codes belonging to the presidential compound were being exchanged. That narrowed the suspects to 5 people. One of them was the president's own communications officer, a man named Salif Dabo. Kemi didn't accuse. He followed. One evening, hidden in the shadows of a diplomatic gala, Kemi watched Dabo step outside and make a call in hurried whispers. The words were brief, but enough. "They suspect nothing. Strike next week. You'll have a clear path to him." The call ended. Kemi tapped his earpiece. Got him. Within the hour, Dabo was detained quietly. No public scandal. No news. Only a brief announcement the next day. "Due to internal restructuring, Mr. Dabo has stepped down." But inside the palace, everyone understood. Another traitor had fallen. And Kemi? He'd proven again why Ibrahim trusted him with the shadows. 2 weeks later, President Ibrahim Traoré addressed the nation. He stood on the steps of the presidential compound, not in a suit, but in military fatigues, just like the days of his uprising. There are moments, he said, when a country is not saved by armies, but by individuals who choose courage over comfort. He didn't name Kemi. He didn't need to. Every minister and soldier present turned their heads ever so slightly toward the far edge of the courtyard, where a young man stood in the shadows. For too long, Ibrahim continued, we have underestimated the power of vigilance, but no more. From today forward, let every child know. They too can be the shield of this nation. The applause was thunderous. Yet Kemi didn't step forward. He simply turned and walked back into the palace. His job wasn't to be seen. It was to protect what others saw. And that he had done. In the years that followed, Kemi became more than an agent. He became a symbol. He launched a discreet academy under Ibrahim's approval. No sign, no public record, but its graduates spread quietly across the country. They were trained to think, observe, and act with precision, just as he had. Kemi made visits to rural schools, always unannounced, always in plain clothes. He didn't speak of war. He spoke of choices, of the power in silence, and the duty to one's people. Bravery isn't loud, he once told a classroom. It's quiet. It listens before it speaks. Meanwhile, Ibrahim's popularity soared, not for promises, but for action. His closeness to the people, his rejection of luxury, and his unwavering respect for those who served in shadows, earned him a place not just in headlines, but in hearts. One evening, during an international summit, a foreign journalist asked Ibrahim, "What was the most important decision of your presidency?" He paused, then smiled. Believing a boy no one else noticed. The sun was setting over Ouagadougou, washing the presidential compound in gold. Inside the quiet of the palace garden, Ibrahim Traoré sat alone, sipping strong tea, his thoughts distant. Kemi approached from the far end, dressed simply, as always. "No agents today?" Ibrahim asked with a grin. "Just me," Kemi said. "Wanted to say something." Ibrahim raised an eyebrow. "I think it's time I left," Kemi said. Ibrahim leaned back. "You've earned rest, but I doubt you'll take it." Kemi smirked.
No.
"I mean vanish completely. No more shadows. No more missions." "You're serious? Every good story has an ending, and mine should disappear like it began." Ibrahim looked at him long and hard. "You've done more for this country than anyone will ever know." Kemi nodded. "That's enough for me." A pause. Then Ibrahim stood and extended his hand. "Wherever you go, you'll still be watching, won't you?" Kemi shook it. "Always." And just like that, he turned and walked into the dusk. No goodbye party. No farewell speech. Just a quiet exit exactly how he came. Weeks later, in a rural town near the border, a group of young boys sat in a circle, listening to an old man tell a story about the boy who saved the president. They asked if it was true. The old man just smiled. "Some truths are too important to be shouted. They're meant to be remembered." And as the final light faded from the sky, a nation slept soundly, watched over by a legend it never fully saw, but would never forget.